Hey horror fans, happy October once again. We are back, board now, Rachel McDonald, for a brand new release. So this is Hocus Pocus 2. Of course, it needs no introduction and it needs
No.
very little setup, but this is the return of Hocus Pocus after 29 years. They've got the original cast back, the original three, the main trio who plays the witches, of course, so that's a big draw for fans of the original and nostalgia. Story about how the witches became witches and how the events of the first movie happened. Two main teenagers who are Izzy and Becca, who are like practicing witches, or they've at least got an interest in experimenting with spells on this ritual one night in the woods, and it goes wrong, and it partly goes wrong because this idiot Gilbert gives them a candle, and it turns out to be the candle which can be used to bring these witches back to Earth, to modern times, and he doesn't tell them. It's intentional, and so the witches return, and from there you get a pretty similar plot to the first one, where they're obviously trying to get a soul so they can remain, on Earth for teenagers. Like, they've got another close friend, Casey. Cassie, sorry, yeah, who they're a little bit on the outs with. They have been close in the past, but then she's sort of got a boyfriend and they've grown further apart. Straight to Disney Plus, this, no cinema release, but it's Hocus Pocus 2. Now, before we say what we think of it, you weren't on the review for the first one, because I did the first one last year, again for October. So just say a few words about the first one and what I'm assuming it's one you grew up with, and are you a fan?
Actually not.
It's not, okay.
This was one of the few movies I actually didn't see growing up, which is really weird because it's 100% up my alley. So I don't know how I missed this movie when I was a child. I first saw this several years ago. My best friend is a massive Hocus Pocus fan, like huge, and she finally sat me down to watch it, and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one of those films that if I had grown up with it, I 100% would have had a lot of nostalgia for it. But I think even seeing it as an adult, it's a fun family film, the original. Again, you have to keep in mind it is made for kids, so it does have a little bit of that silliness, but I think the three main characters, they work really well. I like that each of the sisters has their own distinct personality, and I think the original has a lot of fun. It's got that 90s earnestness, it's got a lot of silly fun. Doug Jones as Billy, who again returns this movie.
Yeah.
He's so good. He's always really good value. And I just think the first movie is like one of those really like good feel good 90s staples. There's a reason it's become a bit of a cult classic. It's got that Halloween vibe. It feels very spooky, it feels very fun, and I think that the actors have a lot of fun in the original, and that really comes through. So I quite enjoy the original, even though I didn't grow up with it. I think it's one of those films that even as you come to it as an adult, it's still a lot of fun and it still holds up pretty well, just because it's a kids film and it's a well-made kids film. And I think if you have a well-made family film, that will transcend like generations, and you can watch something that was made back in the 90s now and it's still good. So
actually grow up with it. I came to it as an adult, maybe didn't get into it as much as I was hoping, but when I rewatched it, I definitely got into it more. And what you said is key. I think it's a really good family film. Like, it ticks all the boxes, and nowadays I think we are a bit devoid of really good family films.
We are.
I think it feels like a bit of a lost art. Like, occasionally you get a good one, but in general, it just seems like they've missed that magic formula, and obviously it's worth saying the other characters in the original film are really good as well. Likeable and quite grounded, quite relatable, and it just ticks the boxes where it's a good fantasy film. It has that sense of magic and wonder, but also there's some good comedy, and it's just that mix of being entertaining, being charming, but having that sense of magic. And yeah, as you said, the three witches are great in it. They're really well cast. So, good stuff. And obviously that big set piece in the middle, which everybody knows, I put a spell on you.
I put a spell on you.
That is so good. That's the sort of scene that you never really get tired of watching it.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so what did you think of the sequel?
I actually really liked it. I thought it was really cute. I thought it was cute. I thought you could really see how much fun the three main actresses were having. I know that Bette Midler herself was actually very instrumental in having this sequel made. She's been pushing for this for years, and Sarah Jessica Parker has been very enthusiastic about coming back. And I'm pretty sure that Kathy, what's her last name? Najimy? I can never pronounce her last name.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so they all seem like it just, I don't know, it's like no time has passed. It's like they just slid straight back into these characters. And one thing I always loved about the Sanderson sisters, and you really see it in this, is how they just kind of exist in their own world, and everything that is said to them, they just kind of relate to what they think is going on. And I just love that they live in that little kind of bubble where it's just like, we're the powerful sisters and everyone here is like, is on our wavelength as opposed to something else is going on. I thought that the teen characters were actually quite good. I quite liked the main girl, the spirit of the original. Obviously it is a more modern movie, so it was a bit meta and a little bit self-referential and a little bit self-aware, which sometimes I like, but I feel like we've lost that kind of genuine earnestness that we had in like the 90s when it came to family films, where we didn't need to like wink at the audience and we didn't need to hang lampshades. You just had these fun films. And I feel sometimes that maybe modern audiences, we either have gotten to the point where we're too cynical to accept that, or executives just think that if you don't put this kind of self-aware wink wink nudge nudge into your movies, that modern audiences just aren't going to buy it. So I do think some of the stuff that was a little bit too self-referential, I was like, look, we get it, we understand that that you're making a 90s-esque movie about witches. We don't constantly need to be like winking to the audience. So I do think that brought it down just a little bit. But overall, the aesthetic was still very Halloweeny. It was still very magical. We still got a fun set piece. In the middle, we got a new song and fun characters. I really did like the opening flashback with the little girls. I thought the little actresses did a fantastic job of like embodying the characters that we already knew. Like you could absolutely look at them and go, yes, this is definitely Winnie, Sarah, and Mary. And I thought they were really good. And even though the story was kind of a rehash of the original, I think they made enough changes that it worked, well. Like it didn't just feel like we were sitting through the same movie all over again, and this one they want to do the spell of like eternal power. It's not just enough that they want to kill and eat the children. Now they want to have the ultimate, big power, which they were warned against. So I thought that was really fun. I did, however, like some of the modern touches, like the girls telling the witches, oh, we have potions now that will keep you young forever, that are already prepackaged, and then they take them to the pharmacy, and I thought that was fun. But I do think sometimes they got a little too self-referential. But overall, I had a lot of fun watching this. I thought it was cute and it was bright and it was, it didn't take itself too seriously. So
good. So this is going to lead to a good discussion because I didn't like it.
Oh no! Why not?
I thought it was pretty lame, and I think I disagree. I don't think it does capture the magic of the original. So we've already said that the original works so well because it is such a good family movie, and it has that mix of fantastical and it obviously having charm and good sort of grounded characters. And so this doesn't, like, this feel like they lean too much into the comedy of it, and they're sort of busy like winking and nudging. The comedy is that good. I think the comedy is pretty weak overall. Like there's a couple of good jokes, and some of the I laughed a little bit, like the thing with the electric door. Always do that sort of humor. Gotta come up with better jokes than this, really. But the jokes were better. Obviously that would have made the film more enjoyable. But I think they leaned too much into the comedy anyway, so they didn't really get the same sort of balance. Like, it didn't really have that sense of wonder or the fantastical miss on the teen characters in this. I don't think they're as good as the original
Oh, I don't
movie.
think they're as good as the original characters. No, I don't think anyone's really going to beat little Thora Birch from the first movie. Like, her character is brilliant, so I agree with that.
Actors were pretty good, but the characters themselves I didn't think were that interesting. Then they actually make the witches the lead, whereas I feel in the original film they were more like the supporting guest stars.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Whereas I think they made and I think that is a problem, because I think these characters work better when they are supporting, when there's less of them. I think they make more of an impact. Too carried away, making like with them being in it so much. And I guess because I didn't like the humor, like a lot of times, although like you said, it is quite fun seeing them back and the nostalgia and the stuff, but it's just because the humor wasn't that good, like the jokes weren't that funny, so I wasn't really enjoying them. And even them, even though like they still look good and it's great to have them back, even them, it felt like they were on like autopilot a bit. And I don't know if it's just because the script itself wasn't very good, so it might have been more the material. I think Bette Midler out of the three comes out of it looking the best, and that probably is, like you said, because it's a bit of a passion project. The other two I thought came off like they were phoning it in a bit, and I don't know, it might just again because the script isn't that good. The gags were weak, and there were some bad lines. Then you have the CGI. The CGI looks bad, and that's another thing which is going to separate it from the 90s film, where the CGI in that I thought was pretty good, especially considering it's early 90s. Yeah, the CGI in this looked pretty bad.
Do you mean when they were like flying and stuff?
Yeah, in general, and then with obviously them shooting rays and stuff like that, and then you had like the book with the eye, and I don't know, the CGI in general. Well, maybe the book was one of the better, but I mean, stuff with like, once again, because as you said, they bring Billy back, and just his face, you know, like the special effects made it just went a bit too cheesy for me.
Flying scenes, and I was like, okay, these look a little like 90s-ish, but then I wonder if they actually did that on purpose, like if they made it look more like the original film so that it would feel like the original film, so that we'd have that kind of 90s-esque look. That's just a thought that I had when I was watching those scenes. Could just be that it was bad CGI, but it could be that they were trying to throw back to the original and make it look kind of more like the original, so that visually the sequel will work as well.
Yeah, see, I would have to rewatch the original now, but because generally early 90s CGI isn't great. It's probably later in the decade that CGI got better, but yeah, I seem to remember the CGI being pretty good for what it was in the original. Sort of mix where they don't really give them much to do till about half an hour before the end. And like some of that stuff near the end I quite enjoyed, but it just felt like it was too late in the day. It felt like they should have given them more to do earlier in the movie. I just think it's a weird choice making the witches the leads. Like, it felt like they were more the leads in this than in the original.
Well, they may have done that because because no other characters returned. I mean, except for Billy. So they maybe made them the leads because maybe they were afraid if they had new leads and the witches were supporting, that it wouldn't bring back the old audience. Because obviously, a lot of this is built on nostalgia. So maybe the three witches are the leads to draw in the audience, to say, yes, look, the three witches are back. You know, if we were trying to follow new characters, maybe people wouldn't be as invested. So that's why they decided to push the witches to being like the main focus.
Because
they're the draw card.
Like that much of a family movie. Like it just feels like they've leaned too much into the comedy, and it's this film which is trying to be witty and nostalgic and wink to the original, and they do that too much. I think to actually have those scenes where they're literally showing scenes from the original, that's a little lazy for me. He does, like with Gilbert, I mean, oh, so he was he was a kid on that Halloween night. He happened to see the witches, and that's his motivation for bringing them back. I mean, what's that? I mean, that's a pretty weak motivation. And
fair enough.
Now that we're on, he's an idiot. I mean,
yeah, he's stupid.
The guy's an idiot. I mean, first of all, tricking the girls like that, but I don't get. Yeah, no, he's an idiot. I don't get why he thought it would be a good idea to bring the witches back. He sort of knows they're villains, so I don't know why he got it into his head.
It seems like he saw them when he was a kid and was probably fascinated by them. And then from what we've seen, he's built his entire life around like witchcraft and that. So I'm guessing what happened is he just became obsessed with them as a kid and then got more and more obsessed with him as he got older and learnt more about them. And, he just is stupid and didn't think and just thought, hey, there's a chance to bring my idols back. So I'm guessing it was less to do with like him seeing them as a kid and more that his like obsession has probably grown as he's gotten older and he's built his whole livelihood around. That being said, I would love to go into his witch store. Oh, I love the look of that store. I could browse in there forever. So yeah, no, Gilbert's definitely an idiot. Like I think he was one of the few characters that I just kind of went, okay, there's not much to this guy except him being like the catalyst for what's going on, and he wasn't the best character.
They were well cast, so I enjoyed them, but that scene you could have done without. I don't think the witches need a backstory. I mean, it's Hocus Pocus 2. Chances are most of the people who are watching it, they're fans of the original film. So you don't need to shoehorn a backstory, an explanation, where the original film didn't really give you one. So that scene just seemed a bit pointless to me. It's can we start the movie now?
Well, I think it was there, one, to show that spell that they were going to do, because they needed to establish that the spell was not,
true.
And then two, I think it was also there to show, okay, so I'm going to get into some spoilers here because I have to talk about the end to talk about this scene. But I think that scene was there to show that despite everything, Winnie's loves her sisters, and the most important thing to her are her sisters, and like the whole thing starts with them trying to take her sisters away from her, and so she runs away. And so of course that comes into the ending, which is when she casts the spell and she loses her sisters and realizes that is too big a price. So I think that opening scene is there to establish that, so that when we get to the end, we remember the beginning and we go, because Winnie can be horrible to her sisters. I mean, we see her hit them and slap them and like order them around. So it can be easy to forget that like she does love them. So I think that opening scene was there to reinforce that, so that when she does give herself up at the end, it doesn't feel out of character. It feels like something Winnie would do. She does actually love her sisters and cannot be without them. So I think that's why they had that first scene, just to set up that last scene and to set up the spell as well.
It probably drags on a bit though, because it's about 10 minutes long now.
Oh yeah, it could go for it does go for a little too long, but I think it establishes like what needs to be established for the movie. Look, I kind of like, I don't think this movie is as funny as the first one. I think the first one is definitely funnier. But this movie had some parts that did have me giggle. Like the dad, the mayor / the Reverend's descendant.
Well, I was going to say Tony Hale, who I love.
Yeah,
it's one of the better parts of the movie.
First of all, him standing in line for his caramel apple and like not getting it in the end. Like, I felt so bad for him. But when he comes home and they've got the witches trapped in the garage, I absolutely love, first of all, his line about, oh, I love the resting witch face, because I thought that was such a fun play on, resting bitch face. And I loved the gothic golden girl.
Yes, that's the line I was going to make. That's probably the line of the movie.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
I heard that and I thought that was just hilarious. I don't know. I thought Sarah Jessica Parker and Kathleen Namajay were, for me they were fine. I think I've always loved Sarah Jessica Parker's character. She's so whimsy and bizarre, and I thought she really got that cluelessness down again. And yeah, like it's not as strong as the first film, obviously, but for me, I don't know, it felt like it captured at least part of the magic of the first film. And I didn't mind the witches being pushed to the forefront, again, because I think that they are the draw card. I think they're the things that most people remember. And I thought the girls looked like they were having women looked like they were having a really good time. And I really did actually quite like the ending. Like, I liked that little reveal that, when the girls worked out that the power spell meant that she'd lose what she coveted most, or what she loved most, and it turned out to be her sisters. I thought that was like a really nice kind of like moment that really humanized the witches and gave them like a nice ending where they were defeated, but they weren't defeated in the same way that they were defeated in the original. So it was slightly different, and we got like a nice little family moment, and they've gone. And then, you had the follow-on effect where the three new girls, the new coven, they've learnt that magic has to be shared, so they can't just go on and, it's kind of like an implication that like they're learning from previous witches' mistakes, and so they're going to go on and like be like a good coven now. I don't know, I just thought the ending was really sweet and almost kind of sad, almost made me cry.
The ending wasn't bad. The ending was all right. Yeah, I take your point about what they did with Bette Midler, her character at the end, because I mean, actually, I did think that was a bit of a cop out, suddenly making her more of a good guy or good woman, if you like. But I understand what you're saying about that. Like, the whole thing with the other girl with Cassie. Yeah, it's like they do the whole thing about, they used to be close, and then she got a boyfriend, and and the boyfriend, his character was pretty lame.
Oh, he was
lame.
I was hoping they'd turn him into a bug or something. That scene where they're chasing him down the street, I'm like, yes, get him, girls.
And they sort of come back together at the end. I don't think they did enough with those characters.
Yeah, I agree. They definitely have done more.
I get what you're saying about the witches, but then I think the problem is the sort of characters they are. Like, they're the sort of characters, I think, who work in smaller doses and like grounded bases with like the teenage or the younger characters, and then you work the magic and all the hijinks around that sort of thing. It's almost like this film, they did it the other way around, where occasionally you got some decent like human characters, but it was more about the hijinks. And the point of Hocus Pocus is to be a comedy. I think it's meant to be a family film which has some good comedy in it, but the comedy shouldn't be the driving force. Balance is there, where you've got a good mix of comedy, you've got a good mix of like coming of age style charm, and then you've got the magic stuff as well.
Yeah, they definitely did not have the coming of age angle in this, because obviously in the first one they do, because you have the older brother who's the Thora Birch's character. Her brother has like a little arc, and then she's got a little arc as well. Whereas in this one, the girls, like, I agree, they are not fleshed out characters, and they don't have that coming of age angle. And I think even the sisters are a little bit softer in this one. Like, they're not quite as menacing. But I think also that might have something to do with the fact that within the series, like within the universe themselves, the sisters have been mythologized. They've become like these larger than life creatures. Like, people know who they are. I do find it funny that they enter a lookalike competition and don't win. Like, that's a nice little. I thought that was funny. Kind of makes me think of that story of Hugh Jackman walking around Comic-Con in full Wolverine garb, and the only comment he got was someone saying, "Oh yeah, man, you're too tall to play Wolverine." So, I thought that was funny. But like, I do get what you're saying. Like, it does not have the same kind of coming of age family feel that the original film did, but I do think that is partly to do with what I was talking about earlier, which is like modern audiences or modern studio execs, they don't seem to think that audiences will buy that kind of earnestness that we had in the 90s. Like, if you look at children's films from like the late 80s and the 90s, they had so much heart. They were so unabashedly emotional and earnest and genuine. And I think that we do a lot get lost in trying to be smart and trying to be aware and trying to make sure that the audience knows that, that the movie knows what it's doing. Maybe this movie needed less of that and more of the earnestness that the original movie had. I just don't know if we're in a time period where we can recapture that kind of earnestness. I mean, that also came with, the reflection of what the world was like in the 90s, which was a little bit cushier than what it is now, at least if you were in a Western world. So I do think that has been lost a bit between the movies. But I don't know, for me, it still was very enjoyable. And I really had a lot of fun watching it.
We can go into another time, but I think a good example of this, of getting the balance right, is the recent Mary Poppins movie. I think that's a good example of how he didn't. I take it you didn't see that.
I haven't seen it. No.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely a good one where it feels like it captures the magic of the original, and it's sort of like Emily Blunt is nodding to Julie Andrews, like that performance, but she also does her own thing.
Her own thing, yeah.
Like, I think her performance is a bit more comedic than Julie Andrews was in that original film. But yeah, it also updates the themes a little bit because it deals a bit more with loss type thing than the original film. But now that's a good one where it's just a good back to basics sort of film where it does exactly what you want from a Mary Poppins film. And there's one or two like newer touches, but generally speaking, it sort of does and it just keeps it simple. And I think that's why it works so well. Because, I mean, depending on the sort of film it is, sometimes you don't really want it to like jazz things up too much or complicate things. That's a good one, and I would say maybe The Force Awakens is a good example where that they probably knew for the sake of the fans that they didn't, they had to keep it quite a back to basic sort of Star Wars style film. And that, I think that was a good example of doing it well, where there was a couple surprises in it, and they obviously introduced a new generation of characters, which was good, but then there was nostalgia for the fans as well. In the middle, the scene, which is obviously the big musical like thing, that scene, and I have a couple. First of all, why the hell are they singing one way or the other? I mean, it doesn't make. Well, yeah, because first of all, and this is a smaller complaint, because I guess you could label the same in the original, but yeah, there's that sort of logic of the song was released in 1979 and it's being sung by witches from the 1600s. How do they even know the song?
Well, how did they know the song I Put a Spell on You?
Well, exactly. That's what I was going to say. So there's an argument then maybe if they sung a 90s song that would work because it was the 90s in the first film. But no, that's a small complaint because I understand it's one of those things. But the other thing, which is a bigger complaint, is I don't get why they use the song anyway, because it's not like I Put a Spell on You where it's a link to them as this has no link to them as witches. I don't get why they're singing one way or the other. It's got nothing to do with
there's no link to them as witches, but they sing it when they're trying to get the town to find the mayor. So it could be like one way or another, I'm going to find you. I'm going to get you. Like they're singing to the mayor, like to their enemy.
I guess it's a little thin.
It's a bit of a stretch.
Didn't really do much for me. It's
I did, however, again, the mayor really was the best part of this movie. When the mob actually find him, he thinks it's a flash mob, and he starts dancing along with them as they're like closing in on him. And he's like, "Okay, it's a flash mob."
yeah,
And then they all find him, and then the spell wears off, and they all just kind of stop. And he's like, "Oh, okay." And that's when he loses his caramel apple, and he's very upset. So I thought that part was funny.
he got the Witches Are Back song.
Oh yeah.
That's a pretty weak song. It's not.
But I don't think that was the point of that. I think that was more just to show, they're back, they're singing. Plus, I like the whole, who are they performing for? And then, they just pop up and they're like, you, because I like that. I thought that lampshade hanging.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that was okay. I think when they, like the actual scene, I quite enjoyed it because the context of the scene and they were being a bit meta. And I agree that was a good moment. But it's when I think it was when they were singing it more over the credits. I thought, yeah, this song is actually bad. It's
yeah, I didn't like it over the credits. It was not great.
Okay. I think we're mostly done. That's obviously a
differing opinions on this one.
Yeah. I wondered. See, I had a feeling you might agree with me, just because, like, from my point of view, it fails to capture the magic of the original movie. I guess you feel differently.
Well, to be fair, I've only seen the original a couple of times, so it's not like it's something I have big nostalgia for or feel really strongly about. I just knew that when I was watching this, it was reminding me of the original, and I was thinking of the original. So for me, it did feel like it captured. But I could go back and watch the original, which I haven't done for a while, and I might feel differently. But I thought this one was was fun and magical and whimsical.
Watch this at some point to see if it hits me better, and I'll obviously rewatch it. But yeah, obviously some of the stuff I had, like, you didn't really have a problem with the CGI. Like I thought it was, not only that it's quite bad, but I thought they overused it as well. Whereas maybe in the original they got a better balance where they sort of held back more on it a little bit and made it count when they did use it more. Billy in this, I didn't find as entertaining either.
He wasn't as entertaining, but he's still fun. Plus, he finally got his rest, He finally gets to go to sleep. The poor guy's been awake since 1993. Like, let him go to sleep. Plus, I always just like Doug Jones. You put Doug Jones in something, I'm there.
He's a good actor. I forgot it was him. Surprised this is only streaming. This feels a bit like something which would have got a decent audience at the cinema at least. Like, because it is.
Normally I would say, the thing is, Disney Plus is, I think, because Disney's such a big entity and because so many people are subscribed to Disney Plus, I'm actually starting to feel like Disney Plus as a streaming service is almost as effective as releasing something into the cinema. Like other streaming services, maybe not, but because Disney Plus is so big and Disney itself is so big, I like when they release things straight to Disney Plus, I don't know. I feel like they do that because they actually think they'll reach more people on the streaming service than they will in the cinema. So no, I wasn't actually that surprised when they put it straight onto Disney Plus because Disney Plus itself is becoming such a big entity.
It's a mixture. Like most things will still get at least a little bit of a cinema run and goes on streaming. And yeah, obviously things are speeding up a bit when it comes to that, because there's been example of films that have been released and it's only really taken a month or a few weeks for them then to go to streaming. Like, it is getting quicker and quicker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought with this, because there seemed to be the nostalgia for it.
Yeah.
And, you've got the audience built in. And I mean, arguably it might still be a bit of a hangover from the pandemic, but you sort of feel like things have got back to normal enough now that maybe it would do at least decent in the cinema. But maybe not. I mean, maybe we're still in a place where unless you're like a really massive brand name or something, then maybe you are going to struggle a bit in the cinema. But yeah, I think I was a bit surprised. Then maybe they just felt, yeah, its natural home was a bit more streaming. And obviously, like, I mean, it's definitely going to do well. To see how well the original movie did, like the box office, because, like, normally with things like this, if they do well, normally they get sequels anyway. So it's
I don't think the original did that well.
No, I think it grew over time as a bit more of a cult film or something like that. Yeah, it didn't do much. Like, I looked at it, it was like it made like 42 million and it cost about 28. So obviously it made its money back. But I mean, obviously that's considering now you think of it as a really much loved movie. Like, yeah, that's not massive box office. And they sort of say a lot of times, I mean, it was maybe less true in the 90s, but like nowadays they obviously say you have to double your box office to really make it back because of the marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is funny looking back. So I guess back then it didn't do well enough. See if in a couple of years we'll get a third film.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or if they'll just leave it as one of these where for nostalgia they've revisited it, but then that's it. It's sort of a one-off.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I mean, I'm sure it's going to do well on Disney Plus. You rate it?
Look, I thought it was really cute. I thought it was fun. I didn't think it was anything over the top fantastic or up there, so I'd probably go with about a 7.5 out of 10. I think it was solid, and I think it was entertaining, and I thought it was really, really cute, like really adorable. So I'm going to go with 7.5 out of 10. What about you?
Okay, way too high. But then again, you might think mine's way too low. I'm going to give it 4.5.
Oh, that's so low. I thought you'd at least go with 5. Oh dear.
Yeah, I think it's pretty lame. I think the script is really weak. And once again, as I said, if the jokes were better, I think that would bump it up a bit. But the jokes aren't that good. Like, I don't think there's a laugh out loud funny joke. I think there's decent jokes. You know, a few good lines, but generally, yeah, there's nothing that's laugh out loud funny.
Keith and I are back to being bickering divorced couple on this video. We've been agreeing too much in our recent videos, so we had to have a disagreement somewhere.
I never got into it really from the start, like a slog, because I got to the point, because I think it's roughly after that performance in the middle. Like, that is about halfway through, because I looked at the time and it was about 45 minutes to go, and I thought, shit, I'm not really enjoying this. And I've got to watch 45 more minutes of it.
Oh, dear.
And I actually broke it up because I went off to the cinema and came back and then watched the rest.
Oh, well.
Yeah, pretty lame, but I'll later on in the month I'll rewatch the first one to sort of sponge my soul of this one. Things. I mean, I think the critics have been mixed on it, but then I think definitely some of the fans are maybe more on your side, and for them it is a good nostalgia trip and they're enjoying it quite a bit. So let's see.
Be on my side, not on Keith's side. Keith is wrong, just so you know. He usually is, so that's okay. You can admit it. Give a description to my channel on this.
See, this was an open goal. I mean, all they had to do was a back to basics, like Hocus Pocus, and they screwed it up.
No,
they tried to make it more of a comedy, and it didn't work. To come from us, obviously, more other new reviews, new films, because later on in the month we'll be doing Halloween Ends, which I'm expecting to be worse than Hocus Pocus 2. But hopefully,
come on.
hopefully not as bad as Halloween Kills, because I don't think it can be that bad, but I'm expecting a 4 or 5 out of 10 at the most. Really, I obviously gave Kills a 3 out of 10, so it might achieve being a bit better than that, but I'm not expecting much from Halloween Ends.
Maybe they'll bring back Busta Rhymes for us. Yeah.
Well, that would certainly make it more entertaining.
Make it interesting.
Yeah. Okay, we also have top 10 lists, and I'll use this. This is a good chance to promote Patreon, because all this month on Patreon, I'm doing a couple special anthology style shows. I'm reviewing those for the spooky season. So I am reviewing season 1 of the Creep Show series, which is on Shudder. Cool. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen any of that or.
No, but I'll definitely check out your reviews.
Yeah. Okay. So the first episode of that I've released public as well, so that's on YouTube. But after the first episode, the rest are on Patreon, and $1 a month will get you those reviews. And the other anthology, just for something a bit more classic and older, I'm doing Hammer House of Horror, the cool. British series from the 1980s. And once again, it's a similar thing where I will release episode 1 on YouTube. The patrons just get it a few days earlier, but then it goes on YouTube. But the rest will be all on Patreon, so it's a good incentive. Maybe, as I said, it's only $1 a month. Patreon.com/board now. And me and Rachel obviously have other horror reviews. We also have a special horror TV list, which is top 10 Halloween themed TV episodes, and I have a monster quiz as well.
Follow me, Rachel McDonald, video essays on TV shows and movies. My Tumblr and Twitter accounts are also linked through there, and Keith usually puts a link in the description, but we're disagreeing on this video, so we'll have to see if he decides to be nice. But come and follow me everywhere.
Okay, thanks guys, keep it spooky, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.